Welcome to Space Oddities, forgotten stories of mankind's exploration of space. I'm Joe Cuhaj. Episode 10, Odds and Ends. Well, here we are, the final episode of the Space Oddities podcast series. I've really enjoyed bringing additional offbeat, obscure, and forgotten tales of space exploration to you that I just couldn't fit in the book. You know, while researching the book, Space Oddities, and being an old-time radio guy who used to write plenty of ad copy, I found that some of my favorite stories revolved around space marketing and how companies were either directly associated with the space program and then later sold their contribution to the general public, or were quite accidentally thrust into the public limelight just by aligning themselves with the space program. On this episode, we'll take a look at one of my favorite stories from the book, but first, some other out-of-this-world space marketing.
Today, the United States is engaged in a gigantic effort to send men to the moon. For this effort, Pillsbury has developed many special foods. Here is the first one to be made available to the public: Space Food Sticks.
In 1962, the Pillsbury Company, makers of canned biscuits and cinnamon rolls, were tasked by NASA to create a solid food for the Mercury astronauts that would be nutritious and give them energy, but wouldn't crumble in space. Led by the company's chief food technologist, Howard Bauman, Pillsbury set about making a solid food cube that first flew aboard the Mercury program's Aurora 7 with astronaut Scott Carpenter. Following the Mercury program, NASA asked Pillsbury if they could make another food item for the astronauts. This time, it would be one that the astronauts could eat with their helmets on, and that could fit through an airtight opening in the helmet. The result was a Slim Jim-like nutrition snack that actually flew on the first lunar landing mission, Apollo 11. The food stick was to be used as a contingency food for just-in-case purposes. Now, there's no record of either Armstrong or Aldrin eating one of the sticks while on the moon. Well, that didn't matter. The energy food had flown to the moon, and Pillsbury began marketing the stick to the general public under the name Space Food Sticks.
To meet the demands of a long spaceflight, Space Food Sticks had to be a compact, nutritious, high-energy food. That's why they make the perfect between-meal energy snack. Energy for hard play. Energy for hard work. Lasting energy to feel alive. If that sounds better than some of the things your family fills up on between meals, you should try Space Food Sticks for good nutrition and lasting energy in a chewy, tasty snack food. Chocolate, caramel, and peanut butter. About 44 calories. At your grocer's next to the instant breakfast section. Space Food Sticks, the energy snack from U.S. Aerospace Research and Pillsbury.
As interest in the space program began to wane in the early 1970s, Pillsbury renamed the product to simply Food Sticks. Now, that's not really an eye or ear-catching name, but the Food Sticks did continue to fly in space aboard the Skylab space station missions of the 70s. Eventually, the brand died out and disappeared from grocery store shelves. Now, in 2006, the Retro Future Products Company revived the food stick and, pardon the pun, relaunched Space Food Sticks, which are still available today online. Now, there were some, shall we say, unique space foods that never made it into space, but the companies that created these gems used the space theme to market them. Snacks like Dippin' Dots, the ice cream of the future, hundreds of brands of cereal, and of course, freeze-dried astronaut ice cream or space ice cream. Now, while these treats are available at your NASA Visitor Center, they were not sanctioned by the agency and never went to space. Sorry to break the news. Do you remember Pop Rocks? You know, they were small bits of candy that, when you put them in your mouth, they would make little tiny explosions on your tongue. Well, Pop Rocks were first invented in 1954 by the General Mills Company in an attempt to make an instant soft drink. No kidding. In the 1970s, the marketing team at General Mills got the wild idea to ground up the Pop Rocks into dust and sell them as space dust.
Visitors from outer space!
We come in peace to bring you terrific tasting space dust sizzling candy.
Space dust?
Wait till you experience the sizzle of galactic grape, orbiting orange, and cosmic cherry flavors.
Wow, the cherry tastes delicious!
I'm sizzling grape.
Space dust sizzling candy. In your mouth, it's out of this world.
Far out.
now. Space Dust, available in outer space or your local store.
Space dust was quite the craze, so much so that in a 1978 article by the New York-based Village Voice, there were reports of the candy being hawked on street corners at exorbitant prices. Unfortunately, the candy's fine, powdery texture led parents to believe that the candy would eventually lead their children into trying illegal drugs. Now, even though General Mills rebranded the candy as Cosmic Candy and the FDA released a statement saying the candy was harmless, sales plummeted, and that was the end of Space Dust. My favorite marketing story that I cover in the book Space Oddities was the tale of the two soda giants, Coke and Pepsi, and how they took the cola wars into space.
Coke is life, it's got the taste and the feeling you like. Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola, come on girl, gotta share a Coke with you. Let the feeling show you.
In the 1980s, the Coca-Cola Company wanted to make life in space more comfortable for astronauts and began developing a system where astronauts could drink carbonated beverages while in space. But at the time, no one knew how a carbonated drink would react in zero gravity, or how an astronaut could drink from a can with a sticky sweet liquid floating aimlessly out of it. The comfort of their crews was always at the forefront for NASA. So the agency went ahead and approved Coke's request to try an experiment with a specially designed soda can on a space shuttle flight. Coke's engineers went to work and spent $250,000 to develop a version of its classic red and white can, complete with their iconic wave logo on it. Inside the can, there was a laminated plastic bag that contained the drink, plus a carbon dioxide pressurized bladder that would propel the drink out. The top of the can had a plastic mouthpiece that acted as a spout that the astronaut could activate with their lips so they could get a swig of the real thing. All was set for the first test of the new Coke can. It would fly aboard STS-51F, the 8th flight of the Space Shuttle Challenger. There was nothing unusual about the experiment, and that's all it was, an experiment. NASA didn't receive any advertising dollars from it, and no promotional deals were struck. In fact, the experiment would have gone unnoticed had it not been for the Pepsi-Cola Company, who caught word of the can and asked NASA to include their own dispenser on the same flight.
All across this country, people took the Pepsi Challenge, and Pepsi won because...
You know a way when you taste one, it's Pepsi. Taste that winning taste.
Pepsi. In tests like these nationwide, more people prefer Pepsi over Coca-Cola.
Okay.
NASA officials reluctantly agreed, but it put the agency and the astronauts in a bind. There was a long-standing policy that American space flights could not be used for commercial purposes. But with the ongoing Earthbound cola wars continuing on the ground, the public could perceive this as breaking that rule. The commander of the mission, Gordon Fullerton, and his crew reluctantly agreed to go ahead with the experiment when it was officially renamed the Carbonated Beverage Container Evaluation Experiment, or CBCE. With the test being deemed an official experiment, there was no inkling of commercialism in the task. However, mission specialist John David Bartow had reservations, telling CollectSpace.com in an interview that he thought it was frivolous and detracted from the science of the mission, and he refused to take part. Given the go-ahead, Pepsi sprang into action because the launch date was fast approaching. They quickly developed their own dispenser, just in time for the July 29, 1985 launch. The can was less high-tech than the Coke version and reportedly cost $14 million to develop compared to only $250,000 for the Coke can. The final Pepsi can was a modified version of the same can that was used to dispense cheese products, like Easy Cheese, that you could buy in any grocery store. The can was not pressurized, but used chemicals to produce the carbonation. Fullerton decided that to further reduce any appearance that this was an out-of-this-world taste testing challenge, the experiment would not be scheduled. Instead, the test would take place only during one of the crew's downtimes, unannounced and away from cameras. 3 astronauts would try the Coke can, 3 would test the Pepsi can, while the 7th crew member, Bartow, was banned to the flight deck while the test took place. The results of the test were kept under wraps. The crew never commented on the taste of the beverages, only on the method of delivery. Mission specialist Anthony England commented that the cans worked as expected. During a post-flight press conference, he told the media that the cans didn't explode, and the drink was immediately available upon request. One problem was discovered during the flight, And that was that carbon dioxide that gives soda its fizz isn't released when you open the can like it does on Earth. What that meant was that the gas stays within the drink, causing the astronaut to ingest more gas than normal, giving them what's called wet burps, where a little bit of liquid is expelled along with the gas, much like acid reflux. The marketing wizards from both beverage companies waited on the edge of their seats, just waiting to pick up the slightest bit of information from NASA or the astronauts on which can was tested first or which drink tasted better. It was eventually revealed that it was the Coke can that was tried first, and with that, Coke's promotional department went into high gear, creating advertisements touting the feat. One print ad had a gloved astronaut's hand reaching for a can of Coke. The caption read, "For the first time in history, our astronauts carried soft drinks with them as they orbited the Earth. Coca-Cola, the first choice in refreshment around the world, is now the first drink tasted in space." Pepsi didn't take it lying down and released their own television ad, proudly announcing that they, too, were aboard the Challenger.
T-minus 30 and counting.
What was that?
Just cracking open a Pepsi.
You think you could talk me through that, Pepsi?
That's a can do. Lifting slow and easy. Water beads keep daddling down the sides.
I can see him.
We have poured. 3, 2, 1.
Pepsi salutes our young astronaut program and is proud to be aboard the Challenger. Pepsi, the choice of a new generation.
Pepsi downplayed the Coke ad, saying that it's about as relevant as who's first in the birth of twins. One Pepsi spokeswoman said if they were the first to be tested, it was the new Coke, and you can be sure that it had to be washed down with a Pepsi. I'm Joe Cuhaj, and thank you for joining me for Space Oddities. You can read more fascinating, offbeat, and obscure space tales like these in my new book, aptly titled Space Oddities, Forgotten Stories of Mankind's Exploration of Space. It's available at your favorite online or hometown bookstore. If you like this episode, then please tell a friend, and be sure to like us on Facebook. Visit facebook.com/SpaceOddityBook. That's all one word. Or you can drop me a line from my website, joe-cuhaj.com, and Cuhaj is spelled Cuhaj. While you're there, you can learn more about my other books and upcoming appearances. Be sure to check out the show notes for today's episode, where you can view video clips and see vintage ads from the classic days of space-age marketing. Our theme music is called Inspired, and it comes to us courtesy of bensounds.com. Thank you for joining me for Space Oddities.